Malice Diary here, and welcome to A Case of Distrust. I awoke in my desk chair. Across from me were his piercing amber eyes. They surprised me at first, but I should have known he'd be there. I stretched and said, mid-yawn, "Not very nice to sneak into a sleeping woman's apartment." But his stare just continued. I shall laugh. I shall laugh in front of your face. I'd seen San Francisco's shrewd thugs, hardened cops, and deadly politicians, but none could ever match that gaze. I knew I didn't have what he wanted. Reaching into my coat, I took out my knife and flicked it open. I held the knife steady. "I'm not giving you the knife. What the heck do you want, boy?" "Look," I said, nodding towards the desk. "That's all there is. Take it or leave it." But a detective knows when she's beat, and I knew then. He wanted to search the place, and that's what he would do. I sighed, knowing my weakness for his type. "All right," I said, "let's look." He let out a gleeful meow in victory. I cut a piece of my apple that the cat had rejected. "Always a sore winner," I jabbed. But I was smiling too, because I was telling the truth. There was absolutely no other food in my apartment. The cat often dropped by to scavenge. He made a lot of noise when he thought I was holding out on him. But right now, the place was clean empty. No food anywhere. I had to prove it to him. "Oh, it's like a point-and-click game. Okay, let's play with the lights." The lamp had belonged to my Uncle Louis. He'd been a SFPD officer, one who argued policewomen could be good detectives, even while the others jeered at me. I knew he'd been right, but my current workload didn't help the claim. I don't feel like thinking about you, Uncle. That's kinda weird." "What, did he die?" "Well, crap. The cat had waltzed into my apartment a few years earlier. He kept coming back, though there was rarely a morsel to eat. He'd continue his loud meowing until I proved to him the place was empty of food. Let's go talk to him." This is a cool game so far. It doesn't matter how doe-eyed you are, cutie pie. "We've got no food around," I told him. He licked his chops and looked at me. Apparently, he still didn't believe that. I needed to contradict him somehow, to show him something in the apartment that would prove it was empty of food. "Let's contradict, meow." "Oh, well, shoot, I don't have anything here. I got no evidence. I got a desk lamp." "You want a desk lamp? Let's use this." "Nothing to eat here," I told him. "I just have a lamp." The cat let out a disagreeable meow. Apparently that didn't satisfy him. I had to show him that where I kept the food was completely empty. "Fine, you don't want to eat the lamp? Fine. You picky cat." "Well, I got this phone book. You wanna eat that?" My old notebook. Oh, it's a notebook, whoops. Now filled to the brim. I wrote everything down, even the minor details. Never know what can be useful. My first half had my old cases. Details from the beats I used to walk in. My police woman days. Of course, policewomen were forbidden from going on patrol, but Lewis often overlooked that rule. He's probably dead. Let's see, I got a parrot. Oh, that's an owl or eagle. I kept a small statue underneath the side table. It had been police evidence in a crime, and its owner hadn't wanted it back. I took a shine to it, so I snagged it for myself on my way out of the department. "You smoke? How could you?" Packaged cigarettes were the latest trend, but I still preferred to roll my own. The ashtray was evidence that it was a practiced skill. I suppose I had a lot of free time back then. "You got this pile of shit?" I had taken the copies of old murder cases from the SFPD records when I'd left. I loved reading through them, even though my own contributions were minimal. At that time, I longed for those type of jobs. The truth was, any work was hard to find for a female detective. What's this thingy? A newspaper was flopped on the floor, its headline about the death of Lenin. It seemed the Bolsheviks had lost their head. And lastly, let's just go here. The regular white icebox, tinged yellow with age, half blocked the kitchen doorway. My income rarely kept much stocked in it, and right now it was empty. Let's use that to contradict the cat, yeah. Wanna eat an ashtray? Nah, that's animal abuse. The icebox. I opened the icebox so the cat would see inside. Empty, I told him. The cat looked quizzically at the open door, then back at me. Sorry, fella. There's no grub in there for me either. Meow. He stared at me with eyes as disappointed as I felt. Those big yellows always got to my soul. Thoughts of my family filled my head. My sister? Well, what about my One-chan? Muriel had sent a letter with an update on her life in Chicago. She and her husband had just purchased a new home outside the bluster of the city. Their 3 young children were looking forward to the move. I had never told Muriel about those letters. I mostly ignored. I don't give a shit about your happy life. I only care about my own. I ignored them. At the time, her family was the last thing I wanted to read about. My sister had the ordinary lifestyle that I had rejected. I wanted to save myself. I wanted to save myself from the monotony of traditional marriage, to prove that a woman could do more than her child-rearing duty. Not that I was helping advance that cause with the types of cases coming my way. I actually wanted traditional marriage. My mind spiraled into the usual series of questions. Had I even impacted a woman's movement? Had I made any change in society at all? Was my plodding career worth losing traditional happiness? What was the point in the life I had chosen? A loud meow from the cat snapped my thoughts back into the moment. I took a deep breath and grinned back at him. I guess you can scram now, I said. Nobody's gonna come knocking with food for you, fella. There immediately came a bang on the front door. Beyond a nuisance, this cat was psychic too. You order out? I asked. Oh, this is cool. Who the heck are you, punk? In the doorway was the regrettably familiar face of Connor Green. His company turned my stomach. What do you want? Let me stare at you. You have no eyes. I stared at him, a hired hand for whomever needed a job done. But Green snitched whenever he was put in a squeeze. Working the beats, I remembered that all too well. Remarkably, the underground had been blind to it, but Green wasn't particularly assiduous. Or however the fuck you say that. I was certain the criminal ranks would eventually plug him. He looked at me through the doorway with a coy smile. Well, ain't you gonna invite me inside? Nope, bye. I started closing the door, but he stuck out a foot to stop me. Hey now, foul way to treat a customer, Malone. So that was his angle. Hiring me as a detective. I wonder what a bootlegger would need with a private eye. But he answered without my prompt. I'll make this quick. I can't take this to the hog house, or the pigs will laugh me out. And other dicks just aren't as tempting. His grin widened. Thought this was gonna be quick, and I started rolling a cigarette. It wasn't quick, and I'd already rolled and lighted a second smoke, when Green finally finished his story. I noted the important bits in my book. It had started with a letter slipped under his door in a white envelope. It read, "End your game, or we'll end you." It had no signature, instead ending with only a small scribble in the bottom right corner that resembled a black hand. Green had a lead on a new rum-running scheme, a connection from Vancouver. He'd given a sample to Tiny Paul, the gangster who ran the Tin Spoon Speakeasy for mob boss Jerry Ferry. They'd agreed to buy in for more. Green surmised the letter was about his rum running. He suspected Redstone Stable, another bootlegger, of sending the letter. He told me that Stable ran a barber shop during the day and gave me the address. Green needed to know who the threat was from. He'd get Paul's gang to deal with them and continue his scheme to get rich. If I go snooping myself, he concluded, folks see I'm not trusting people. No trust leads to no customers. I need to play it low-key, which is where you come in. I raised an eyebrow and stared at him through the cigarette smoke. Something in his yarn was still twisted. He must have noticed my reticence, because he said, I worked closely with Louis. I'm sure he'd want to protect me as much as any other victim. My uncle. Oh, okay, so Uncle is dead. I was still searching for answers. He'd been a man obsessed with helping victims and bringing justice to those beyond salvation. With that ethos, I never understood how he could have taken his own life. Those thoughts haunted me. I quit the SFPD and started my own practice, taking his philosophy. Was Green worth my time? Would he be worth Lewis's? Green had tipped off my uncle in a few cases. I wondered if that was enough to warrant my protection. Before I could think past my headache, he threw a bill in my lap. Keep the C-note as a retainer. And don't worry about getting in touch. I'll find you later for a chat. He turned down the hallway and I let him go. If he was willing to give me $100 with no commitment, I wouldn't stop him. Heck yeah! Give me that cash, yo! I turned back to the apartment, still confused about the whole story. My headache wasn't helping either. Whenever I lacked clarity, a trip to Southern Coffee was usually the cure. I'd mounted a gold plate on the outside that read PC Malone, Private Investigator. There was only one place I needed to go to clear my head. Southern Coffee! It was a basement dive. It wasn't modern, hip, or very busy. And it was my favorite place to down some paint. Especially in the company of the best bartender in the city. I flagged a taxi cab and was on my way. I thought about chatting with a driver to pass the time. I usually don't, but you might as well, I guess. We began idle chatter, but the driver kept stifling laughter. When I asked him why, he apologized and said, just got out of a Felix the Cat showing. They're running all of them back to the Orpheum. Best dime I've spent. We talked about Felix the Cat collection, including his favorite, Felix in Hollywood. Can you believe they got Charlie Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks into cartoon? We came to my destination and he was still laughing. I stepped out of the taxicab with a smile on my face. Southern Coffee was an automat diner. Ethel Burgess, the lone waitress, was friendly to help with any inquiry. Of course, if you winked at her right, she'd show you the way to the downstairs toilet, where Frankie played bathroom attendant. Southern Coffee had a distinct feeling of home. The familiar smell of mold in the old basement was enough to put a grin on my face. Gross, what's this? Frankie had a bond with that old shaker at the end of the bar. I was surprised he hadn't named it. He could sling a mean drink, though he'd only use the good liquor if he liked you. Frankie liked me. What's up, Frankie boy? Frankie tended bar at Southern Coffee. Though it wasn't his place, I had never caught a whiff of the real owners. They trusted Frankie to do what he did best. I said, "Hello, Frankie," and was met with a smile and a grunt from Franklin Ernest Conway. He was a fantastic orator, but knew when to be a good ear. For my money, there hasn't ever been, nor will there ever be, a more loyal barman. I sat at the bar. "You got the spooks, PC?" he asked. "You're worn as a catcher's mitt." I suppose my exhaustion showed. I won $100 for nothing, and I can't let it go. I told Frankie about the case. The threatening letter sent to Connor Green, how he assumed it was related to his bootlegging, and his suspicion of Redstone's stable. The story took longer than I'd wanted, Frankie showing genuine interest by asking many questions. When I finished, he drew me the whiskey sour he'd been stirring. I took a large gulp and gave a sigh's thanks. "Well, Green's case is better than most of what you're given," he said with some enthusiasm. "At least it's not more of that adultery bunk." "Oh, that sounds like an enjoyable case though. I want to catch the slutting around, yo." "Sure," I replied. "But I started with a goal in mind. What's the point in helping a man like Green?" Frankie clicked his tongue on his teeth. "Lawyer or priest? Why does it matter? Let me ask you, are the clients you have now the types you want to help?" I admitted they weren't. They're all pieces of shit. I told him that I wanted more from my detecting life. It could be that Green's case shoots your career forward, Malone. I sighed and stared down at my drink. But my daze was interrupted by the basement door opening and slamming shut. A small, blustering woman began marching towards me. She was wearing a light blue cloche hat with a gray ribbon, tilted back on her head, a scarf of similar blue draped around her neck. But I was startled by what she wore underneath, a gray trench coat that looked too large for her frame. It was exactly like the one that belonged to Lewis. Wait, is this like his wife or his old lover? She hurled insults at me a while. All I could do was sit and take it, until she ran out of gas and started breathing heavily. I set my drink on the bar and looked her in the eyes. I studied her features. "I'm not saying hello to you. F you." It was plain she was a knockout now that she'd finished shrieking. Beyond the latest blush and lipstick, she had the natural soft skin and bright eyes perpetually desired by the opposite sex. While I was eyeing her, she caught her breath and restarted her tirade. "I'm the wife of that bum who sneaks into your bed." The cat? The humor was in her angle, and she launched into another poetic stanza. "And he just left your sty this morning," she finally ended. And that was when I gathered she was Connor Green's wife. "Mrs. Green, I'm a PI, not a homewrecker. And I don't think your husband, in his line of business, would want to bet a dick anyhow." Her look was pure incredulity. A woman in that line of work? I don't believe it. "Prove it." "Ah, fuck. I have Green's letter. Am I supposed to show this shit?" "I'll just show it to her. That's your wife anyway." I told her about why Connor had come to me, the bootlegging and the threats. "You see, Mrs. Green, this is what I do. There's not much more I can show you to prove it." It still took more coaxing for her to believe me, but eventually she came around. She seemed grateful I'd explained it to her. Apparently she had seen her husband leave my apartment and, distraught, she had followed me all the way to Frankie's basement and decided to confront me. "Well, look, even if I was doing your husband, you should confront him, not me. I wouldn't know that he has a wife." "I suppose I lost my head after what I thought I'd seen," she said. And then she began to cry.